Someone is loving you honestly because you never gave up on them, and that truth lives quietly in the space between all the moments you almost walked away but chose to stay instead. It lives in the pauses where silence could have become distance, but you turned it into understanding. It lives in the times when the world felt heavy on their shoulders and you didn't try to fix them, didn't demand they be different, didn't leave when things stopped being easy. You stayed. You stayed with patience. You stayed with softness. You stayed with a belief in them that did not shake, even when they themselves were unsure. You may not have realized it at the time, but every time you chose not to give up, you were teaching them what honest love looks like. Honest love doesn't shout. It doesn't rush. It doesn't threaten to leave at the first sign of discomfort. Honest love is quiet consistency. It is choosing the same person again and again, even on the days when they are tired, confused, imperfect, or afraid. You did that. And because you did, someone learned how safe it feels to be fully seen and still be chosen. There were moments when they pulled away, not because they didn't care, but because they were scared of being a burden. Scared of being too much, scared that if you truly saw all of them, you would walk away. And yet, you didn't. You met their distance with patience instead of anger. You met their fear with reassurance instead of pressure. You met their silence with presence. That is not something people forget. That kind of love leaves an imprint on the heart. You never gave up on them when they were struggling to believe in themselves. You never used their worst moments as proof that they were unlovable. Instead, you saw their potential even when it felt hidden under layers of doubt and exhaustion. You reminded them, sometimes with words and sometimes just with the way you stayed, that they were worth the effort. That they were worth waiting for. That they were not alone in their becoming. Someone is loving you honestly now because you showed them that love doesn't disappear when things get hard. You showed them that care is not conditional on perfection. You showed them that real connection doesn't ask someone to be healed before they are held. It meets them where they are. It grows with them. It allows room for mistakes, for growth, for learning. Because of you, they learned that love can be a place of rest, not a battlefield. There were days when you could have chosen the easier path. You could have walked away and told yourself it was self-preservation. You could have convinced yourself that staying was too heavy, too draining, too uncertain. And maybe sometimes it was. Maybe sometimes you felt tired, unappreciated, or unsure if your effort mattered. But you stayed anyway. Not because you were weak, but because you believed in something deeper than temporary comfort. You believed in connection. You believed in loyalty. You believed in them. That belief became a mirror. Over time, they began to see themselves through your eyes. They began to realize that if someone could love them with that much patience, maybe they were not as broken as they thought. Maybe they were worthy of care. Maybe they deserved consistency. And that realization changed them. It softened them. It opened them. It taught them how to love back without fear. Someone is loving you honestly because you never made them feel like a project. You never treated their pain as an inconvenience. You never rushed their healing or demanded they be strong all the time. You allowed them to be human. You allowed them to have bad days. You allowed them to be quiet, messy, uncertain. And in that allowance, they found freedom. Freedom to be real. Freedom to trust. Freedom to love without constantly looking over their shoulder, waiting for the moment you would leave. You may not hear it every day, but your presence taught them something powerful. It taught them that love can be steady. That affection doesn't have to come with fear. That closeness doesn't have to hurt. That someone can see your flaws and still choose to stay. Once someone experiences that kind of love, it changes the way they give love in return. It becomes more honest, more gentle, more true. They love you honestly now because they know you are not going anywhere easily. They know your care is not shallow or temporary. They know your love has roots. It has history. It has proof. It has survived moments of doubt and still remained. That gives them the courage to love you fully, without holding back, without pretending, without hiding parts of themselves. They feel safe offering you their whole heart because you once held it when it was fragile. There were times when they tested you, not intentionally, but unconsciously. They needed to know if your love would last beyond the good days. They needed to know if you would still be there when they were quiet, distant, or overwhelmed. And every time you stayed, every time you didn't give up, you answered their unspoken question. You told them, without words, I am not leaving. That answer became the foundation of their trust. Someone is loving you honestly because you taught them that love is not about control or possession. You never tried to cage them. You never made them feel guilty for being themselves. You encouraged their growth, even when it meant change. You supported their dreams, even when they felt unsure about them. You wanted them to become more, not smaller. And that kind of love inspires loyalty, not obligation. You showed them that commitment is not about losing yourself, but about choosing to stand beside someone as they find themselves. You showed them that patience is not weakness, but strength. That kindness is not naive, but powerful. That staying is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. Because of you, they learned to love with intention instead of fear. Even now, in quiet moments, they remember the times you didn't give up. They remember the conversations where you listened without interrupting. The moments where you reassured without judging. The days where you stayed present even when things were uncertain. Those memories are not small. They are the reason their love for you is honest, steady, and real. Someone is loving you honestly because you never made them earn your care. You gave it freely, without keeping score. You didn't remind them of past mistakes. You didn't use love as leverage. You gave because you cared, because that is who you are. And that kind of love teaches someone how to give without fear of being taken advantage of. They learned from you that love can be a safe place to land. That it can be warm and patient. That it can grow slowly and still be strong. That it can survive misunderstandings and still choose understanding. That it can exist without drama and still be deep. Because of that lesson, they love you now with clarity, not confusion. With presence, not doubt. There were moments when they didn't know how to receive your love. Maybe they questioned it. Maybe they felt undeserving. Maybe they were afraid it would disappear. But you stayed consistent. You didn't pull away just because they struggled to accept care. You allowed them to learn, at their own pace, what it means to be loved without conditions. That patience created trust, and trust created honesty. Someone is loving you honestly because you never gave up when things weren't perfect. You understood that love is not about flawless days, but about shared effort. You understood that growth takes time. That people are allowed to change. That healing is not linear. And instead of expecting perfection, you chose compassion. That choice changed everything. They love you honestly because they feel seen, not judged. Heard, not dismissed. Chosen, not tolerated. Your love did not demand they hide their pain or pretend to be okay. It invited truth. And where truth is allowed, honesty in love naturally follows. You may not always recognize the impact you've had, but it is there. It is in the way they look at you with trust instead of fear. It is in the way they speak openly instead of guarding their words. It is in the way they show up consistently instead of pulling away. All of that comes from knowing they are safe with you. Someone is loving you honestly because you never gave up when it would have been easier to leave. You chose effort over escape. You chose understanding over assumptions. You chose patience over pride. Those choices taught them what real love looks like in action, not just in words. You didn't love them to be praised. You didn't stay to be admired. You stayed because your heart told you it mattered. And because of that, the love you receive now is not shallow or performative. It is deep, grounded, and sincere. It is love that knows your worth because it has experienced your consistency. They love you honestly because you made space for their fears instead of dismissing them. You didn't tell them to just get over it. You listened. You validated. You understood that everyone carries something heavy. And in that understanding, they learned that love doesn't rush healing, it supports it. There is something incredibly powerful about not giving up on someone. It tells them they are not disposable. It tells them they are not replaceable. It tells them they are worth staying for. That message stays with a person. It changes the way they see themselves. it changes the way they love. Someone is loving you honestly because you helped them believe in love again. Maybe before you, love felt unpredictable or unsafe. Maybe it felt like something that could disappear at any moment. But you showed them a different version. One that stays. One that listens. One that grows. And once someone experiences that, they don't forget it. They love you honestly because your care was not loud, but it was deep. It was in the little things. The way you remembered details. The way you checked in. The way you noticed changes in their mood. The way you showed up, again and again. That kind of love feels real because it is real. You never gave up on them, even when they were learning how to love you back. Even when they were still unlearning old patterns. Even when they needed time. You understood that love is not always instant, but it is built. And because you allowed that process, what you have now is something solid. Someone is loving you honestly because you never made them feel like they had to be someone else to deserve you. You accepted who they were while believing in who they could become. That balance is rare. It creates a love that is both comforting and inspiring. They love you honestly because you are not just a chapter in their life, you are a constant. You are someone who stayed when things were uncertain. Someone who believed when things were unclear. Someone who loved when things were difficult. That kind of presence turns affection into devotion. Even on days when love feels quiet, it is still there. It is in the trust. It is in the comfort. It is in the ease of being themselves around you. All of that exists because you never gave up on them. Someone is loving you honestly because you taught them that love doesn't mean losing yourself, it means finding safety in being who you are. You created that safety. And now, their love for you is not driven by fear of loss, but by genuine connection. You stayed when you didn't have to. You believed when it wasn't easy. You loved when it required patience. And because of that, the love you receive now is honest, deep, and real. It is not fragile. It is not uncertain. It is built on the simple, powerful truth that you never gave up on them, and they will never forget what that felt like. And in the quiet ending of all these words, let this truth settle gently in your heart. Someone is loving you honestly not because you are perfect, not because life has been easy, but because you chose to stay when walking away would have hurt less. You chose to believe when doubt was louder. You chose to love when fear tried to take over. That kind of love leaves a mark that time cannot erase. They love you honestly because your presence became their reassurance. Because your consistency became their peace. Because your patience taught them that love doesn't vanish when things get uncomfortable. You became proof that commitment can be kind, that care can be steady, that affection doesn't have to be earned through suffering. You showed them that being loved can feel safe, and once someone feels that, they hold on to it with their whole heart. So if you ever question your worth, remember this: The love you receive now is a reflection of the love you gave when it mattered most. You didn't give up on them, and in doing so, you helped create a love that is honest, grounded, and real. A love that stays. A love that chooses. A love that knows, without doubt, that you are worth holding on to.